10 days after I hired a lawyer to save myself from my family's financial betrayal, my parents lost their house, my sister's marriage fell apart, and I became the villain in a story where I was actually the victim. I'm sitting here in what used to be my childhood bedroom, except now it's completely empty. The walls are bare, there are nail holes where family photos used to hang, and you can still see the faded rectangles on the wallpaper where picture frames protected the paint for decades. This house, where I learned to ride a bike in the driveway and where we had Sunday family dinners every week for 28 years, is about to be foreclosed on. And according to my entire family, it's all my fault. These papers in my hands aren't just legal documents. They're the evidence of how the people who raised me to always help family, to always trust family, to always put family first, used those exact values to destroy my financial future. My dad taught me to read contracts carefully when I bought my first car at 16. "Always know what you're signing, Maya," he said. "People will try to take advantage of your kindness." The irony would be laughable if it wasn't so devastating. My name is Maya Chen. I'm 28 years old, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had my life figured out. I'm a financial analyst here in Austin, Texas. I make $75,000 a year, which isn't rich, but it's comfortable. I bought my own condo when I was 26. I have a solid emergency fund, and I've never missed a payment on anything in my life. I was proud of being financially responsible, proud of being independent, and maybe most importantly, I was proud of being the daughter my parents could always count on to help when money got tight. My sister Sophia is 2 years younger than me, and she's always been the dreamer in our family. Where I'm practical and careful with money, she's spontaneous and believes everything will work out. She works in marketing for a local startup, makes about $40,000 a year, and has never met a credit card she couldn't max out. But she's also warm and funny and lights up every room she enters. Growing up, I was the responsible one and she was the fun one. And somehow, that dynamic followed us into adulthood. My dad, David Chen, is 55 and runs a small import business with my mom, Linda. They've been married for 30 years and they've always presented themselves as this united front. Dad's the charmer. He can convince anyone of anything with his smile and his trust me attitude. He taught me to work hard, to save money, and to always help family. Mom, Linda, is 52 and does the bookkeeping for their business. She's quieter than Dad, but she's always been the one I'd go to when I needed emotional support. She taught me that family loyalty was the most important value we could have. For my entire life, my parents have been my financial role models. When their business struggled during COVID, I helped with their mortgage payments for 6 months without them even asking. I just saw they were stressed and quietly sent money. When Mom needed surgery 2 years ago and their insurance didn't cover everything, I paid the difference. When Dad's delivery truck broke down and they couldn't afford repairs, I co-signed a loan to help them get back on their feet. I never asked for repayment because they were my parents, and that's what family does for each other. But 3 months ago, I discovered that the people who taught me about financial responsibility had committed fraud against me. The people who raised me to trust family had used that trust to steal my financial future, and the parents who always told me that family comes first were willing to destroy my life to pay for my sister's dream wedding. My voice is shaking, because even now, even after everything that's happened, I still can't fully believe it. I keep waiting to wake up from this nightmare where my own parents looked me in the eye, watched me sign papers they claimed were insurance forms, and then told me I should be grateful for the opportunity to pay for my sister's $380,000 wedding loan because I'm single and can't afford it. This is the story of how my family's definition of loyalty nearly destroyed my life, and how I learned that sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones who claim they're doing it out of love. This is about what happens when you finally find the courage to say no to people who've never heard that word from you before. Before everything fell apart, my life was exactly where I wanted it to be. I had a routine that worked for me. Wake up at 6, hit the gym before work, grab my usual vanilla latte from the coffee shop downstairs from my office, and spend my days analyzing market trends and investment portfolios for clients who trusted me with their financial futures. It's ironic, really. I was so good at protecting other people's money, but I couldn't see the trap my own family was setting for me. My condo in downtown Austin was my sanctuary. I'd saved for 3 years to put down that 20% down payment because I refused to pay PMI. That's just how my brain works. Every piece of furniture was carefully chosen and budgeted for. My kitchen had this beautiful granite island where I'd sit with my laptop on Sunday mornings, paying bills and updating my budget spreadsheet. I know that sounds boring to most people, but there was something deeply satisfying about seeing those numbers line up, knowing exactly where every dollar was going. I loved being single. I know that sounds defensive, but it's true. While my friends were dealing with relationship drama and compromise, I could make decisions quickly and live exactly how I wanted. I traveled when I wanted, bought what I wanted within reason, and never had to explain my choices to anyone. My parents used to joke that I was married to my spreadsheets, but they said it with pride. I was their success story, the daughter who had her act together. The Chen family dynamic had always been pretty straightforward. Sunday dinners at my parents' house were sacred. Mom would cook these elaborate meals, usually some combination of Chinese dishes and American comfort food because Dad never fully adjusted to traditional Chinese cuisine, even after 30 years of marriage. We'd sit around their old dining room table, the one with the wobbly leg that Dad kept saying he'd fix, and catch up on everyone's week. Sophia would usually arrive 15 minutes late with some dramatic story about her job or her latest dating adventure. She worked for this trendy marketing startup downtown, and she was always stressed about campaigns and deadlines, but she genuinely loved the creative aspects of her work. The problem was Sophia lived paycheck to paycheck. She'd get excited about a new project and celebrate by buying expensive clothes or booking a weekend trip she couldn't afford. Then she'd stress about money until the next paycheck came in. My parents enabled this pattern, honestly. When Sophia overdrafted her account, Mom would quietly transfer money to cover it. When she needed a car repair, Dad would take care of it without asking for repayment. They treated her financial struggles like they were just part of her personality. Oh, that's just Sophia being Sophia. But when I made financial decisions, they expected military precision and constant updates. David and Linda's import business had been struggling since COVID hit. They imported home decor and small furniture from Southeast Asia, selling to boutique stores and interior designers across Texas. When travel restrictions and supply chain issues hit, their revenue dropped by 60% almost overnight. I watched my dad age 5 years and 6 months as he tried to keep the business afloat. That's when I started helping financially, though they never directly asked. I'd notice Dad looking stressed during Sunday dinner, or I'd overhear Mom on the phone with the mortgage company asking for an extension. I'd just quietly send money transfers with notes like, for groceries or early birthday gift. It felt good to be able to help. It felt like I was finally able to give back to the people who'd sacrificed so much to give Sophia and me a good life. The business was slowly recovering by the time Sophia met Jake Morrison. He was this confident real estate agent who drove a BMW and wore expensive suits. He wasn't flashy in an obnoxious way, but you could tell he was successful. Sophia was head over heels from their second date, and honestly, we were all relieved. Jake seemed stable, responsible, and genuinely crazy about my sister. When they announced their engagement after 8 months of dating, the whole family was thrilled. Sophia had never been happier, and Jake fit into our Sunday dinners like he'd always been there. He even helped Dad fix that wobbly table leg, something none of us had gotten around to in years. But I should have noticed the signs. The way my parents' faces would change when Sophia started talking about wedding venues and guest counts. The way they'd exchange glances when she showed us pictures of dresses that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. I was so focused on being supportive and celebrating my sister's happiness that I missed the growing panic in my parents' eyes as they realized what they'd promised to pay for. The wedding planning started innocently enough. Sophia had this Pinterest board with about 300 pins of dream wedding inspiration, and she'd show us photos every Sunday dinner. "Look at this venue, isn't it gorgeous?" She'd gush, scrolling through pictures of some sprawling estate with crystal chandeliers and gardens that looked like they belonged in a fairy tale. Jake would nod enthusiastically, and my parents would smile and make encouraging noises. But I started noticing how Dad's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. As the months went on, the scale of Sophia's vision became clear. She wanted 200 guests, a destination-style venue an hour outside Austin, a designer dress, professional photography, videography, a live band, and flowers that would cost more than most people's cars. Every conversation became about the wedding. Maya, you have to see this cake design. Or, Maya, what do you think about having a champagne fountain? I was genuinely excited for her, but the numbers kept getting bigger and bigger. 2 weeks before the wedding, our family home turned into complete chaos. The house phone rang constantly with vendors confirming details, deliveries, and last-minute changes. Mom was running around with lists taped to every surface, trying to coordinate what felt like a military operation. Dad was stressed in a way I'd never seen before. He'd always been the calm, collected problem solver in our family, but suddenly he was snapping at everyone and pacing around the house like a caged animal. I had taken a full week off work to help with the final preparations because I could see how overwhelmed my parents were. I was answering vendor calls, picking up decorations, and basically acting as an unpaid wedding coordinator. Sophia was having daily meltdowns about something. The flowers weren't the right shade. The caterer wanted to change the menu. The photographer was sick and sending a replacement. I felt like I was putting out fires every hour. Tuesday morning, I was sitting at Mom's kitchen table with my laptop, trying to work remotely while simultaneously fielding calls from the florist who was having a crisis about whether the centerpieces would fit on the tables. I had spreadsheets open, vendor contracts scattered around me, and I was on hold with the venue coordinator when Dad walked in looking more serious than I'd ever seen him. "Maya, honey, I need you to sign some insurance forms," he said, holding a thick stack of papers. "It's just to make sure everything's covered for the wedding venue and vendors in case something goes wrong." I was juggling 3 different crises at once. My phone was buzzing with work emails. The florist was explaining some complicated delivery issue, and I was trying to cross-reference the catering timeline with the band's setup requirements. Dad set the papers down next to my laptop and pointed to several signature lines highlighted in yellow. "You're so good with financial stuff. This is just to protect everyone," he said, sliding a pen across the table. "The venue requires it, and since you're helping coordinate everything, your name needs to be on the insurance paperwork." I should have read them. I know that now, but I was literally on a conference call with my boss while trying to solve a crisis about table linens, and Dad was standing there looking stressed and grateful for my help. The papers looked official. There were insurance company logos at the top, and terms like liability coverage and event protection scattered throughout. I signed where he pointed while half listening to my boss explain a client emergency that needed my attention. "Thanks, sweetheart," Dad said, quickly gathering up the papers. "This just ensures that if anything goes wrong with the wedding, everyone's protected." 3 days later, Sophia's wedding was absolutely beautiful. The venue was stunning, the flowers were perfect, and my sister looked like a princess. Gave a maid of honor speech that made everyone cry happy tears, and for one perfect evening, our family felt solid and united. I remember thinking as I watched Sophia and Jake dance their first dance that all the stress and chaos had been worth it for this moment. The first sign that something was wrong came 3 weeks after the wedding. I was at work reviewing quarterly reports for a client when my personal phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Ms. Chen, this is Jennifer from First National Bank calling about your loan payment schedule." I actually laughed. "I'm sorry, but I don't have any loans with First National Bank. You must have the wrong Maya Chen." There was a long pause before she said, "Ma'am, according to our records, you're listed as the primary borrower on a $380,000 wedding expense loan that was processed last month." The bank representative's words kept echoing in my head as I sat in my car outside my office building. $380,000. Primary borrower. Wedding expense loan. I called the bank back twice, convinced there had been some kind of clerical error, but each time they confirmed the same devastating information. My name, my social security number, my employment information, all attached to a loan I had never applied for, never wanted, and definitely couldn't afford. I drove home in a daze, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. The first thing I did was tear apart my home office, looking for any paperwork related to the wedding. I found the vendor contracts I'd helped organize, some receipts for decorations I'd picked up, but nothing that looked like loan documents. Then I remembered Dad quickly gathering up those papers after I signed them, how he'd seemed almost relieved when I didn't ask questions. I called my bank to check if anyone had run credit inquiries on me recently. The customer service representative put me on hold for what felt like forever before coming back with information that made my stomach drop. Ms. Chen, I show multiple credit checks over the past 4 months from various lenders, including First National Bank. There's also been some unusual activity. Someone accessed your credit report 6 times between February and May. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept calculating the monthly payments in my head. $380,000 at what the bank said was a 7% interest rate would be over $3,000 a month for 15 years. My take-home pay was about $4,500 monthly after taxes and retirement contributions. There was literally no way I could afford this loan and still pay my mortgage, car payment, and basic living expenses. The next morning, I drove straight to my parents' house. It was a Saturday, and I found Dad in the garage, tinkering with some project like nothing had happened. The normalcy of it all made me feel crazy, like maybe I had imagined the whole thing. "Dad, we need to talk now," I said, my voice shakier than I intended. He looked up from his workbench, and for just a second, I saw something flicker across his face. Guilt, maybe, or fear. But then his expression shifted back to that familiar paternal concern. "What's wrong, sweetheart? You look upset." I pulled out the printouts I'd gotten from the bank, my hands trembling as I held them up. "Dad, there's a $380,000 loan in my name for Sophia's wedding. I never applied for this. I never agreed to this." He barely glanced at the papers before setting down his screwdriver and looking at me with this expression I'd never seen before, like he was talking to a child who didn't understand how the world worked. "Oh, that," he said, his voice so casual it felt like a slap. "Yeah, we needed someone with good credit to qualify for the wedding loan. You're single, you make good money, you can afford it. Sophia needed her dream wedding." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline, waiting for him to say he was joking or that there was some misunderstanding. Instead, he just turned back to his workbench like the conversation was over. "Dad, I can't afford a $3,000 monthly payment. This loan will destroy my financial future. I'll lose my condo, my savings, everything I've worked for." He shrugged without turning around. "Maya, you've always helped the family. This is just helping in a different way. Besides, if you really can't pay it, we'll figure something out eventually." I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience. Figure something out? "Dad, this is fraud. You used my identity to take out a loan without my knowledge or consent." That's when Mom appeared in the garage doorway, carrying a glass of iced tea, like this was just a normal family conversation. "Maya, honey, you're being dramatic. You've always been so good with money, and you live alone in that expensive condo. You obviously have money to spare. Family helps family." I looked between my parents, these people who had raised me, taught me right from wrong, shown me what family loyalty meant, and realized they genuinely believed what they were saying. In their minds, because I was single and financially stable, my money was somehow community property when the family needed it. That night, I sat in my car outside their house for 2 hours, crying and trying to process what had just happened. My own parents had committed identity theft against me and expected me to be grateful for the privilege of paying for my sister's fairy tale wedding. I spent the next 3 days researching my legal options, barely sleeping, barely eating. That's when I found Rebecca Martinez, an attorney who specialized in financial fraud cases. During our first consultation, she confirmed my worst fears. The loan was legally valid because of my signatures. The way my parents had obtained it constituted fraud. Rebecca Martinez was exactly the kind of attorney I needed, sharp, no nonsense, and completely unfazed by family drama. During our second meeting, she spread out all the documents I'd gathered across her conference table like pieces of a puzzle. "Maya, what your parents did goes way beyond just using your credit," she said, pointing to specific sections of the loan application. "They committed multiple felonies here." The investigation Rebecca conducted over the next week revealed details that made me physically sick. My parents hadn't just forged my signature on loan documents, they had falsified my income information, claiming I made $180,000 annually instead of my actual $75,000. They had used my Social Security number to access my credit reports multiple times without permission, and they had opened a joint bank account using my information to receive the loan funds. But here's the most damaging part, Rebecca explained, sliding a document across her desk. They used your employment information to create fake pay stubs. They called your HR department pretending to be from a mortgage company and obtained verification of your employment, which they then manipulated to support their false income claims. I stared at the fabricated pay stubs with my name on them, showing a salary that was more than double what I actually earned. The level of premeditation was staggering. This wasn't a desperate last-minute decision. They had been planning this fraud for months. Rebecca's strategy was straightforward but devastating. She would send my parents a legal ultimatum. They had 10 days to transfer the entire loan back to their names and remove me from all liability, or she would file criminal fraud charges and a civil lawsuit that would expose every detail of their financial deception. The evidence is overwhelming, Rebecca told me as she prepared the legal documents. Bank fraud, identity theft, falsification of financial documents. We're looking at potential federal charges here. But I want to give your family one chance to make this right before we destroy their lives. When Rebecca's ultimatum letter arrived at my parents' house, all hell broke loose. Dad called me within 2 hours and I could hear the panic in his voice for the first time since this whole nightmare began. "Maya, you can't do this to your family," he said, his voice shaking. "We'll lose everything. The business, the house, everything we've worked for our entire lives. You're going to destroy us over money." For the first time in my life, I didn't try to comfort him or find a solution to his problem. "Dad, you destroyed yourselves when you committed fraud against your own daughter. I gave you a chance to fix this quietly, and you told me I should be grateful for the privilege of paying for Sophia's wedding." Sophia called next, screaming so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "You're insane. You're going to send our parents to prison because you're too selfish to help family. Jake is already asking questions about our finances because of this loan. You're going to ruin my marriage." "Sophia, they committed identity theft. They falsified documents. They broke multiple federal laws. This isn't about family loyalty. This is about criminal behavior." Mom tried a different approach, calling me crying and begging. "Maya, sweetheart, we never meant to hurt you. We were just so desperate to give Sophia the wedding she deserved. Can't we work something out? Maybe we could make payments to you instead of the bank?" The most heartbreaking part was that they still didn't understand the magnitude of what they'd done. They kept framing it as a family financial disagreement instead of recognizing it as the serious crimes it actually was. Those 10 days felt like the longest of my life. My phone rang constantly with calls from relatives who had been told some twisted version of the story where I was the villain trying to destroy the family over money. My aunt called to tell me I was cruel and heartless. My cousin sent me a text saying I was dead to the family. Only my grandmother, Dad's mother, called to ask if I was okay and to tell me she was proud of me for standing up for myself. On day 8, Rebecca received a call from a bankruptcy attorney representing my parents. They wanted to negotiate. But it was too late for negotiations. When the 10-day deadline passed with no resolution, Rebecca filed everything. The fraud investigation moved swiftly once the federal authorities got involved. Within 2 weeks, my parents' business assets were frozen. Their personal bank accounts were under investigation, and their house was in foreclosure proceedings. The most devastating revelation came during the investigation. My parents had been using family members' personal information for other financial schemes for years. I wasn't their first victim. I was just the first one to fight back. 6 months later, I'm sitting in the same coffee shop where I used to grab my morning latte before work, but everything about my life has changed. The legal battle is over, but the emotional aftermath feels like it's just beginning. My parents lost their house last month, the same house where we had Sunday family dinners for 28 years, where I learned to ride a bike, where I brought my first boyfriend to meet them. Watching the foreclosure signs go up in their front yard was one of the hardest things I've ever experienced, even knowing they brought it on themselves. The federal investigation revealed that my parents had been running financial schemes for at least 3 years. They had used my uncle's information to open credit cards, taken out a small loan using my cousin's identity, and had been manipulating their business books to hide debts from creditors. What I thought was an isolated act of desperation was actually part of a pattern of financial fraud that had been escalating for years. I wasn't their first victim, I was just the first one with the resources and knowledge to fight back effectively. Sophia's marriage to Jake lasted exactly 63 days. When Jake's attorney explained that being married to Sophia could make him legally vulnerable to the fraud investigation, he filed for annulment so fast it made my head spin. Sophia called me the day the annulment was finalized, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her words. "Maya, my marriage is over. Mom and Dad lost everything, and everyone in town knows what happened. Are you happy now?" That phone call broke something in me, not because I felt guilty, I knew I'd done the right thing, but because I realized that Sophia still didn't understand what had actually happened. In her mind, I was the sister who chose money over family, not the victim of a crime who had protected herself from financial ruin. The hardest part wasn't the legal battles or the money or even losing my relationship with my parents. The hardest part was discovering that my own family had been willing to destroy my financial future and genuinely believed I should thank them for the opportunity. They had convinced themselves that because I was single and financially stable, my resources were somehow community property when the family needed them. I've had to completely rebuild my understanding of what family loyalty means. For 28 years, I believed that helping family meant saying yes to every request, never questioning their motives, and putting their needs before my own financial security. I learned the hard way that real family doesn't commit crimes against you and then demand your gratitude. The financial recovery took months, but it was successful. The loan was transferred back to my parents' estate during their bankruptcy proceedings, and my credit report was eventually cleared of all the fraudulent activity. I kept my condo, my job, and my financial independence, but the emotional recovery is still ongoing. Some people in my extended family still think I'm the villain in this story. My aunt won't speak to me, and several cousins have made it clear they think I destroyed the family over money. But my grandmother, the one person whose opinion I've always valued most, told me something I'll never forget. "Maya, they taught you to be generous, but they never taught you that generosity shouldn't come at the cost of your own survival." I've learned to set boundaries that I never thought I'd need with family. I've learned to trust my instincts when something feels wrong, even if the people I love are telling me it's fine. Most importantly, I've learned that protecting yourself isn't selfish, even when the people hurting you claim they're doing it out of love. Would I do it again, knowing the cost? Absolutely. Because the alternative was spending the next 15 years paying for a $380,000 loan I never agreed to, watching my financial future crumble, while my family convinced themselves they'd done me a favor. Today, I'm still single, still financially independent, and still proud of both of those things. I've started volunteering with a nonprofit that helps people navigate financial fraud because I've learned that family-perpetrated financial abuse is more common than anyone wants to admit. My advice to anyone watching this is simple. Read everything before you sign it. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong, and remember that real love doesn't come with a price tag. Your financial security isn't negotiable, no matter who's asking you to sacrifice it. Sometimes protecting yourself means accepting that other people will paint you as the villain, even when you're the victim. But your peace of mind and financial security are worth more than their approval. Thank you for listening to my story. I know it wasn't easy to hear, and it definitely wasn't easy to live through, but I hope that by sharing what happened to me, I can help someone else recognize the warning signs before it's too late. If you're dealing with something similar, please know that you're not alone, and you're not crazy for feeling like something is wrong. Trust those instincts. Your financial security matters, and you don't owe anyone your financial future, not even family. If this story resonated with you, or if you think it might help someone else who's dealing with family financial manipulation, please share this video. Sometimes people need to hear that it's okay to protect themselves, even from the people they love most. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever been in a situation where family tried to guilt you into financial decisions that weren't in your best interest? How did you handle it? Your experiences might help someone else who's struggling with similar issues. And if you want to hear more stories about standing up for yourself and setting healthy boundaries, even when it's difficult, please subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. I'll be sharing more about my journey of rebuilding relationships and learning to trust again after everything that happened. Remember, your worth isn't measured by how much you're willing to sacrifice for others. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is protect yourself, even when it hurts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.